Hello, my name is Sebastian, and in this first submission of mine to CG Touch Plus, I'm going to be making this model right here. This is a high poly, high detail model made completely in Maya, using standard polygon tools, no plugins or anything. I would consider this tutorial to be for intermediate users, because I'm not going to go through exactly how, say, control edges work or how stuff like that works, so you'll need to know a bit of that stuff beforehand. But for the intermediate user, this will be quite perfect for giving you some maybe tips on how to do this thing in Maya, because most of the tutorials on this subject are done in 3ds Max, so I figured a tutorial in Maya would be proper. So this gun is the Luger P08 model, and let's just begin here. So here we go. That's so what you can see here is I have quite a bit of the thing already made. This is because I figured that this part wasn't the best. I mean, it wouldn't really teach you anything if I would kept it in the video. I mean, all I did was extrude a box, or actually make it plane and then just extrude it along the x-axis and just make that shape. I have pretty much the entire handguard done, well, somewhat done. I'm going to tweak it a bit later on, but that's done, and I've started on the little protruding bit right here, which I'm not sure what it's called because I don't know much about guns. What I'd like to just mention at the start here is that I'm using a lot of reference for this model. When you are making a high poly gun model, especially in the specific or most models at all, really you need to have reference. And luckily we are on the internet, and the internet has a lot of reference, so it's very easily found. Just either you sometimes need to pay some money for it, but it tends to be worth it. In this, you can see I have two references in my actual Maya viewport using the standard Maya image planes. One is a right orthographic, or right view basically, and one is a left one, because the gun isn't symmetrical, because no guns are really symmetrical. And I also have in my other monitor, because I'm running a multiple monitor setup, so I have in my other monitor, I have a lot of references. There's a website, I think it's Pixagogo or something like that. It has a lot of references of just this gun in different angles and different lighting. So I have that site open all the time, and I'm just looking at it. And reference is vital, because when you're making these models, maybe you don't want them to be exactly realistic, like actually like as realistic as they would actually work if they were real. But I mean, you do want them to look fairly realistic, and it's a goal you should always try to keep in mind. That's what I do in this model, and it works quite well for me. How I add edge loops, I guess I should mention. I'm just using the standard Maya insert edge loop tool, which has been in Maya for a long time. And merging, I either do the standard collapse vertex tool thing that just merges them to the center, or I just select one vertex, turn on point snapping, which is done by hitting the V key, hitting and holding the V key on your keyboard, and then just snapping a vertex onto the next one, and then selecting both of them, and then using the collapse to merge them both together. Or I do one of the newer tools, which was added in Maya 2009, which is the interactive merge vertex tool, which is similar to the Max one, and is quite a useful one, although it doesn't always work, so sometimes you might have to do it another way, so I wouldn't get too reliant on that. But also, one of the things I need to mention before anything is when you're making these things, yes, it's important to have these good, well-made control edges so that you can have some sharp edges, but you don't want to have too sharp edges, which is an issue that I make once or twice in this video. I have two sharp edges, and two sharp edges might not seem like a big deal, but when baking, it actually ends up being quite the issue, because it doesn't really, the lighting doesn't really like it, and lighting is what kind of dictates how your model is going to be baked. So try to keep your edges not too sharp, but still sharp enough to make them look mechanical. So yeah, here I'm using the split polygon tool, which is another one of Maya's default tools, which is very well. It's been in every Maya version for quite a while now, so you should have it. You may see that I'm using Maya 2000. Sorry, you may see that I'm using Maya 2011, which is the newest version as of this date, and basically I'm not doing anything different. I mean, if you have, say, Maya 2008 or Maya like bloody 7 or something, you could easily do the same things, because I'm not using any kind of fancy new tools except the merge vertex tool, but that can easily be done with other tools. and really it's not that big of a deal. All that's really different with 2011 for me is the interface, which is much nicer. And I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but the way I'm seeing my mesh subdivided is I'm not actually subdividing it. I'm using the smooth mesh preview, which is another thing I think was added in my 2008. And the way you use that is you press the number 3 on your keyboard, and that turns on it basically quickly converts your temporarily converts your mesh to a sub-D mesh, kind of, and shows you how the mesh would look if you'd subdivided it twice. And it's very useful for doing stuff like this. Basically, pressing 3 on your keyboard activates that, and it's incredibly fast, and it doesn't actually increase any geometry on your mesh, so it doesn't take that much. It doesn't take as much computer resources as actually subdividing it would. So that's always good. So yeah, here I think I'm done with the basic parts of the handle, and I'm going to make this little screw part down here, and it's quite the not too difficult, but I kept it in because I'm doing it quite an interesting way, I guess. I'm making a sphere. I'm going to flatten that sphere, and then I'm going to use the actual geometry in the sphere to make that little inset there. So I'm going to extract that using the mesh extract tool, which is under the edit mesh, or actually no, I think it's in the. It might be in the edit mesh menu set or the mesh menu set. I'm not sure. I usually just use my shell for that, but one of those, and that just extracts the selected faces into a new object. So I do that, then I cap the end, and then I'm going to mirror that over, and I'm going to collapse those to it as the same object, and then I'm going to actually kind of attach them to each other by the bottom face. You'll see what I mean. It's not the easiest thing to explain in words, but you'll see what I mean, and it's quite the useful thing, really. So here you can see me flatten it, and here you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to actually delete, first of all, using the fill hole tool, which is another one of those standard Maya tools, which is under the mesh menu set. And basically, you select one edge of a open hole in your mesh, and it automatically fills it with a giant face, and it's very useful for, well, filling holes, which is what it's named to be, obviously, as meant to be used for. So, as you can see, I have a hole in the front of the mesh there. That was because I was quite sure that I was going to make it the trigger guard as part of the same handle mesh as the handle, I guess. And so I kept the hole there for whenever I wanted to extrude it out, and you'll see me do that a bit later. Here, I think I'm just checking either talking to someone on Skype or checking references, yeah. Yeah, I'm mostly checking references. When you see me stop like that, I'm checking either saving or checking references. So here I cut a bit out because it wasn't really that educational. Here I'm trying to make a little like protruding bit right here on the handle, which doesn't actually, I think, exist on the mesh, but I saw something similar in one of my reference images, and I figured I wanted it because it kind of looked cool. It ended up kind of working, kind of not working, but I mean, it didn't hurt the model at all, so I kept it in by the end of it. Yeah, I did some stuff there, and I'm going to do some more stuff here, and some stuff. Selecting some faces, and then I'm going to scale these in. I could always extrude the other ones out, but I'm not going to. Also, good tip if you have a computer that's not too old, go into the My Preferences and turn on Unlimited Undos, because that is the single most useful feature I've noticed in Maya, which is quite odd, but yeah, having Unlimited Undos is such a good safety net. It's not that you necessarily need unlimited undos, it's just that you need kind of the sense of security that gives you. You can just mess around with things as much as you want, and then you can just undo it all if you feel like it hasn't worked. So here I'm trying to make some weird part like there where the two parts kind of intersect, and it kind of doesn't work at the start, but I end up fixing it, and it did quite work out now. So here I'm just tweak some geometry, and on that note, I kind of feel that I need to mention that people seem to think that the only time edge loops are important, or edge flow is important, I should say, is when making organic meshes like humans or characters, basically stuff that deform. Which it is. It's very important for those meshes too, but it's also very important for guns and mechanical meshes. Why? Because when making your high poly model, you want your edge loops to be able to flow correctly, so that you can add control edges as easily as possible. And That's something people tend to forget. I'm all for, when actually making the low poly version of your model, then you can just go crazy with the edges. You don't need to care about edge flow pretty much at all. But when actually making your high poly, yeah, edge flow is quite important because you want those control edges to flow, and if they don't, well, you have some issues. So you saw me do something to that there, and I think the handle is mostly done now. Mostly, I mean, I'm going to tweak the size a lot here because I don't have a straight-on front reference image, so I'm going to have to estimate most of this. It'll make more sense when I have the rest of the model in, but at the moment I'm just trying out some things. So the hand's probably a bit too thick now, but it'll be fixed later on, so I think I noticed that and I'm just fixing it. But yeah, so that was it. I think the handle is, yeah. You may also notice that I'm not actually modeling in the little pattern on the handle there. Why am I not doing it, you may ask? Well, that would just be a lot of unnecessary geometry and it would mess up my edge flow completely. It's much easier to do those kinds of things in actually Photoshop, just in Photoshop, and with the either the NVIDIA normal filter or like the X-normal filter. It's just way easier doing it in there, so that's what I tend to do. Really high surface stuff, I just generate from that and then tweak in Photoshop. Here I'm trying to add some weird little crease right there. It doesn't end up working, and I do end up removing that because it just looks weird. And this is the joy of just working without any kind of supervisor, because I can just mess around as much as I want with the model and have fun with it without having like time constraints, and you'll see me do a lot of that here. So as you can see, I'm kind of trying it out. It kind of looks like that in real life, so I kind of tried it out, but it doesn't really work out, and I'm going to remove it just in a few seconds. And yeah, also you may see I'm not using the standard Lambert material. I'm actually using I think it's a Phong shader with a slightly blue specular on it. Why am I doing that, you may ask? Well, I want the specular on there just so that I can see my detail correctly and see how things smooth. And Phong tends to be my favorite kind of specular shader, so I just used that. It gave quite a good result. So here you'll see me just tweaking some edges, and a lot of the videos down here. I'm probably going to remove the that little edge right there. Well, maybe not, but I thought I would. So you may see me using basically this tutorial. I'm not using any plugins whatsoever. All the tools I'm using are the standard Maya tools that you can find in Maya, obviously, and so it shouldn't be too hard to follow along. Here again, what I did there was actually averaging the vertices out. It didn't end up working right there, but it tends to be a good tool to use. It's on the mesh menu set, and basically if you select a couple of vertices that are close together or something like that, it kind of does what it says. Basically, it averages the position out and gives quite a nice smooth result. It's kind of like if you are used to the UV editor in Maya. It's kind of like relaxing the UVs, although on your vertices, and it's quite a good tool to get used to using. I have that equipped to a hotkey because I tend to use it a lot. And that's a good tip for anyone doing 3D stuff who wants to speed up their workflow. Use hotkeys, because hotkeys are very, very good. And they do really speed up your workflow quite a bit, and you should use them. So I think... sorry. I think this is the point where I realized that this just looks shit, and I'm going to remove it because it messes up my entire edge flow, and yeah, 3, 2, 1, and goodbye. The way I did that, might have mentioned that as well. I deleted that edge loop, as you may have seen. What I did, it's a pretty simple thing really. You just select the edge loop, the entire edge loop, and then you hit the backspace or the delete key on your keyboard, and that deletes it. What it does, however, which is kind of odd, it leaves the vertices kind of floating where the edges used to be, and you can see some of my references there, not that, but my previous thing. But yeah, it leaves some of the vertices floating on the mesh, which can look kind of odd at times, looks kind of awkward at times, but all you have to do is select those as well, and then just hitting the same key again, backspace or delete, and it'll delete them, and it'll look fine by the end. So that's what I did there. Very useful for changing edge flow, and that's why I use it. So here I'm going to start creating the little trigger guard. Yes, trigger guard. the way I snap those edges there, making them all flat, was I actually have in my move tool options, I have use component spacing turned off. What that allows me to do is when I snap something to grid or to a point, it really does snap all the points to that point. And I said points too much, but basically in layman's terms, if you select a row of vertices and then say snap it to the x-axis, it all turns flat on that axis. So it's very, very useful. I barely ever turn it off, and that's the way I flatten that. I either flatten the edges by doing that, or I flatten them by just scaling them in the appropriate axis, and it'll flatten them out. So here I'm just checking around, seeing if it works. It doesn't quite end up working the way I want to, so you'll probably see me tweak some bits here, adding some more edges. Also, in this tutorial, you'll see me having mirrored things quite a bit, which there are kind of like real supported ways to mirror objects in Maya, kind of, but not really. I mean, there is move reflection or tool reflection, which is kind of like mirroring, but only for a few distinct tools. So I don't tend to use that a lot. What I do is I duplicate special, and I duplicate it as an instance, and then I duplicate it on x1 on -1 on the x-axis, and that does you know that does what you think it does. That mirrors it over into a different object and stuff like that. So that's good. So let's see what I'm doing here. Using the standard extrude tool. The issue with making the trigger guard the same mesh as the handle is that I'm being given a lot of geometry just to start working with, which isn't my preferred way to do. I like just having a very quick base and just working off of that, and that's my way of working. That's just my preference. Maybe not yours, but that's why I like to do it. But I just did this right for this model because it was the fast way. So here's just me. I could extrude this from a curve or a EP curve or something like that and extrude it like that, but this would it's not that big of a deal really. This goes quite quickly as well, so I wanted to just do it manually, so that's what I'm doing here. So extruding and scaling. Extruding is one of the, if you don't know what extruding is, you probably don't know much, as much as I'm going to teach you in this tutorial, so probably should look up some stuff like that. But extruding obviously is probably the most used tool I use in Maya, except for the move and scale obviously and stuff like that, these translate tools. But yeah, so here so you can see me, that's the trigger guard, pretty much done. I'm going to tweak it a bit more, but that's pretty much it. And so not much more on that note. So yeah, let's just see what I'm doing here. Not entirely sure. Oh yeah, deleting some edges, because I figured the curve there was a bit sharp, so I figured I'd delete that edge loop and see how it looked, and it looked quite good. Keeping that edge sharp, because that is going to end up connecting to the above piece right there, and you know, it'll work out good. So what do we have here? Going to make one of those little screw parts, I guess they are. Not sure if they are screw parts, but they look like screws. So all I'm doing there is just making a cylinder. I'm going to redirect some edges in the caps there because I don't like the little star-like geometry I get from that. It generally tends to not work out, having triangles bundle up into a point, and it generally doesn't smooth well, so I end up not doing it. So yeah. Let's see here. Not much to say, honestly. I'm just adding control edges, and I'm going to keep that sharp. I'm going to end up making that also the same material as one of my previous ones, so it matches. Yeah, you can see that with the new geometry, it makes it's smoothing a lot better, and that's all good. And the other part here, the other side, is actually quite different. It's a bit tilted because again, the other part here, it's going to have quite a noisy texture to it, not as in diffuse texture, but the actual texture to it is going to be quite noisy, and therefore it's also a bit. I'm keeping it a bit rounded. I'm not actually adding the noise again because I'm going to do that in Photoshop because it's just easier, as I said before. So yeah. So as you see here, what are we doing? Keep it at pace. So yeah. So let's see here, what do we have here? I'm going to duplicate that, because there's a small piece right there next to it, and I want to keep that looking good as well. And that's what I'm going to do. Sorry for not talking much at the moment, but there really isn't much to explain here. This is quite obvious. Here I'm going to tweak this little curve here because I figured it was a bit sharp, but then again it's quite sharp on the actual gun, so I figured keeping that edge. I'm not going to keep it as close as that, but I'm going to keep it quite close. So yeah. So I think the trigger guard is quite done at this point, really. I just need to tweak some of the shapes on the handle, because it doesn't quite look the way I want to. What I'm doing here is actually I'm using the soft selection tool, which is which was added in May 2009, I believe, and it's just what you think it is. It's a soft selection tool. So it kind of moves selected points or faces along, like averaging everything around it out as you move it, and it's very useful. You activate that by hitting the B key on your keyboard and just going to town, basically. And if you want to change the radius of the kind of smooth thing, you hold the B key down and you drag, so you can see it's basically like any other kind of brush thing in Maya. Yeah. So here, what I'm doing here is I'm actually beveling some edges out, and that's on the edge mesh menu set. I believe it's called chamfering in 3ds Max, and it does basically what you think it does. It splits one edge loop into two more averaged out edge loops, and it's a very useful tool. Therefore, I have it actually even assigned to one of my hotkeys, because I'm cool like that. And I do advise anyone, as I said previously, to assign tools you commonly use to hotkeys, because it just, believe me when I say that it speeds up your workflow a lot, and it just makes you feel a lot more pro as well, because you can just make stuff very quickly. And speed is one of those things that's very, very important in this, I guess, industry, because if you're going to pretend to work in one of these, time constraints is one of the main problems you'll have to deal with, and yeah, you have to get used to it. So being quick is also a very important thing. I guess you could give some tips now that I don't really have much to say here, because the things I'm doing right now are quite obvious, averaging some stuff out here. Some tips for new users. The main thing I would give, the biggest tip, is to go and join a forum for this kind of stuff. Forum, a online community that helps you with 3D stuff. There are lots of them out there. Well, not lots, but quite a few good ones, and like game artisans or game artists or Polycount or 3D4Games. All those places are very, very good places for you to post your work and get constructive feedback. And being able to take constructive criticism is one of the most important parts of learning 3D. Personally, I always put my work out there, and I always get good criticism, and I get to improve. And it's great being in this stuff, and it's a very collaborative effort getting good at this. I've only done this for a few years now, and no, I don't consider myself that good, really, but I consider myself better than what I once was, and I think that's the only thing I really want. So here I'm actually going to start doing the, I guess it's the clip. I know clip and magazine are two different things, but I don't really know the difference. Yeah, I don't know much about guns at all, really. I know very, very, very little detail about them. So let's just see here what I'm doing. What are we doing? Yeah, I'm making a cube, a little box as a start. You may think that I know how this clip looks like from out of my head, just seeing me working. But yeah, again, I have a lot of reference open in my other monitor, and that's helping me make this. So I'm not going to spend too much time making this clip. Why, you may ask? Well, because it's not going to be the main part. Even if you're going to have this gun as, say, a first-person shooter gun, the clip isn't going to be shown that often. Generally, it's going to be shown when reloading, and when you're reloading, your hand, or the player's hand, is most likely going to cover up the clip anyway, so not really that big of a deal, keeping it extremely highly detailed. I'm going to make some detail on it, but not too much, not too serious, and I kept it in just as I figured it'd be quite fun to watch, I guess, and stuff like that. So let's see what we're doing here. Oh, so I have to yawn. Oh, yeah, sorry. Hopefully I'm not boring you people. I'm trying to keep this tutorial as constructive as I can, but again, that's quite difficult, as usual. Here I'm trying to make some details here. It's not going too well, I have to admit, but you'll see me scrapping this idea quite soon and making quite a new thing out of it. But you'll see me. I kept this part in because it's you'll learn from your mistakes, right? And it's like therapy, forcing myself to watch these parts. But yeah. So let's just see what we have here. Yeah. This is basically what we have. Again, just keep trying to make this the way I tried to at the start, but ending up not working. So I'm going to make this another way. Here I'm going to bevel that edge right there. I'm going to keep going to connect some edges. Going to bevel that one as well, just so that I can keep my edge flow correct, and you see what I'm going to do with that quite soon. Adding one of the edge loops right there and one of the right there, and then connecting both of them up with the split polygon tool. And that works out good for me because that does what I wanted to do. Again, just very soft and mushy when I subdivide it, but that's because I don't have any kind of control edges again. And I'm going to have to add them right up now, I think. Or, well, I'm going to add some edge now anyway. It's, again, like parts with this clip here, this is like the prime example of why you really do need reference, because I had no idea how this looked from the start. I mean, the Luger model, it's kind of a popular gun. It's one of those old, I think it's World War I guns, I think, maybe? Or World War II, I'm not sure. Again, I don't know much about gun history, but it's one of those popular used ones in games and such, so most people know how this gun looks, just kind of in their head. If you would see one, you would recognize it basically from games or something. But the clip is something that most people don't see, and seeing as I am exactly like those people, I had to look up reference, and the reference really does help. And for mechanical objects, you tend to just need to Google a bit, or search or ask for forums, or something like that. For organical things, a very, very good site is 3D.sk. I'm not sure if I get to mention that, but it's a generally widely used site for 3D reference, and it's very good. So you should probably go to that site and get some reference, boy. So here you see me having some issues with my normals, which tends to be an issue. But yeah, so that's pretty much the basis of the clip there. As you can see, not very, very advanced at all. It kind of looks crap, honestly, but it ends up, when I'm finished with it ends up looking, decent. Here I'm going to do some, for the first time in this video tutorial, I'm going to make some floating geometry, which you'll not see me finish today, or in this part of the tutorial anyway, because I'm going to cut this tutorial to an end quite soon, because we've been going for half an hour, and maybe you need a break, and I need a break too, so. But yeah, I'm going to make some, going to start at least making some floating geometry for some holes here. You'll see me, I'm not sure if I cut it out, but I'm going to do this a lot of different ways, and it ends up not working in a lot of ways, but what I did at the end quite worked out, so I'm quite happy with that. But yeah, you'll see me. This trial and error is one of the main things when modeling, basically. Even sculpting, if anything, is very much trial and error, because sculpting is so free, it's so fun, basically, that really you can just mess around and it'll look good. Mechanical modeling isn't quite as fun, I guess, but it depends on your opinion. I tend to prefer sculpting because it's more interactive. This is more the old-fashioned, like, use tools kind of way of working, but I still enjoy this as well. It's all fun. It's all good fun. 3D has so many different aspects of it that really I enjoy all of them. Well, most of them. I'm not much for animating. I've never really tried it, so I guess I can't really say much about it, but I'm more of a modeling kind of guy. I don't want to bother about weights and joints and lattices and silly things like that. But yeah, you can see that's a start of the floating geometry. I'm going to split that into a few parts here. I'm not sure if I kept this in this part of the tutorial, but I'm going to split this into a few different holes, because it's not just one big one, it's actually a couple of separated ones. But yeah, so here I cut before when I've added a few edge loops, and I'm just going to keep tweaking my mesh, tweaking the mesh, and trying to make it correct. And it's a good point making when making floating geometries to turn on backface culling for the object so that you can see the backfaces, the negative normals, because it kind of helps you estimate how. Here you can see me doing it here, double-sided, turn that off in the render stats. You can see me doing that like right there, and see what that does. It makes it look much more like floating geometry. So, yeah. I'm not going to go through why I use floating geometry because it's quite a lot of people have covered it already on this site, and I figured I don't really need to, considering most of you people know it, and I consider this tutorial to be for more intermediate users, so therefore I'm not going to go through exactly what it is constantly. Here I'm going to add the divisions for the, but yeah, that was probably the end of this part. Yeah, this is the end of this part. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and bye.